This story is titled, I Found Out My Husband Has Been Secretly Meeting Up with a Female Coworker Outside of Work. I never thought I would be the kind of woman to doubt her husband. I believed in trust, in honesty, in the kind of love that didn't require second guessing. But life has a cruel way of testing even the strongest foundations. My name is Linda. I'm 52 years old and I've been married to my husband David for nearly 25 years. We built a life together. A home, two beautiful children, years of memories. If you had asked me a few months ago, I would have told you with absolute certainty that David was my partner in every sense of the word. But now, I'm not so sure. It started with the little things. A late night here, an unanswered text there. David had always been a hard-working man, often putting in extra hours at the office, so I never questioned it. But then, something shifted. One evening, he came home later than usual, a faint smile still lingering on his lips. I asked him about his day, and he gave me the same answer he always did. Meetings, paperwork, the usual. But I noticed the way he avoided my eyes, the way he hesitated just a second too long before answering. I told myself I was imagining things, that after so many years together, maybe I was just looking for problems that weren't there. But then it happened again, and again. It wasn't just the late nights. It was the way he suddenly became more protective of his phone, turning the screen away from me when he texted. It was the way he started leaving the room to take certain calls, lowering his voice just enough that I couldn't hear. It was the way his cologne lingered stronger than usual when he walked through the door, like he had freshened up right before coming home. I wanted to ignore it. I wanted to believe that I was overthinking things. But doubt, once planted, has a way of growing. One night, as we were getting ready for bed, I casually mentioned that I'd love to stop by his office one day, maybe take him out for lunch. He stiffened. It was subtle, but I saw it. I don't think that's a good idea, he said too quickly. Work's been hectic. I barely have time to eat. I smiled, pretending I hadn't noticed the tension in his voice. But inside, my stomach twisted. The next day, I decided to do something I never thought I'd have to do. I waited until he was in the shower, then picked up his phone. My hands trembled as I navigated to his recent messages. And then I saw it. Her name was Claire. My breath caught in my throat as I scrolled through their conversation. The messages weren't blatantly inappropriate. No I love you, no confessions of anything physical. But they were intimate. Jokes shared. Late-night check-ins. A familiarity that felt too personal, too close. One message stood out among the rest. From David, sent just 2 days ago. Tonight was nice. I needed that. The floor seemed to tilt beneath me. My heart pounded so loudly I thought he might hear it through the walls. I put the phone back exactly as I had found it and crawled into bed beside him, my mind racing. I wanted to believe there was an explanation, that I was misunderstanding, but deep down, I knew. I knew something wasn't right. For the next week, I watched him more closely. I noticed how he smiled at his phone when he thought I wasn't looking, how he lingered in the car for a few extra minutes before coming inside. And then, on a cold Thursday evening, I got my answer. He told me he was going to work late. Again. I nodded, pretending not to care. All right, don't work too hard. As soon as he left, I grabbed my coat and followed. I felt ridiculous, like a character in one of those detective shows, tailing her own husband. But as I drove a safe distance behind him, the nausea in my stomach only grew. He didn't go to the office. He went to a little cafe across town, and she was already there. Claire. I recognized her from a company event we had attended together months ago. She was younger, maybe mid-30s, pretty in an effortless kind of way, the kind of woman who didn't have to try too hard to be noticed. I parked across the street and watched as David sat down with her. He leaned in when he spoke, smiling in a way that was different from how he smiled at me. There was something warm in his eyes, something I hadn't seen in a long time. My hands gripped the steering wheel, knuckles turning white. I told myself to breathe. To think. I didn't know what hurt more, the fact that he was here, with her, or the fact that he hadn't looked at me like that in years. I wanted to storm in, demand answers, scream, cry, anything to release the ache clawing at my chest. But instead, I sat there, frozen, watching my husband share a piece of himself with another woman. The dinner lasted an hour. They laughed, talked, and when they stood to leave, he reached out and touched her arm. Just for a second. But that was all it took. I waited until he left before driving home. My mind was a storm of emotions, my heart caught between denial and devastation. When he walked through the door later that night, I was waiting. How was work? I asked, my voice steady. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. Exhausting. Just meetings, back to back. And that was it. The lie. The confirmation. I looked at him, the man I had built my life with, the father of my children, and realized I didn't know him at all. Something inside me snapped. David, who is Claire? His face went pale, and in that moment I knew. David's face drained of color, his lips parting slightly like he had forgotten how to speak. For a moment, the room was silent, except for the sound of my own heartbeat, thudding hard against my ribs. What? His voice was barely above a whisper, but I saw the panic flash in his eyes. I held my ground. Claire, who is she? His throat bobbed as he swallowed, and then, like clockwork, the excuses began. She's just a coworker. We work on a lot of projects together, that's all. I had expected him to lie. I had prepared for it, but that didn't make it hurt any less. You work on projects together? I repeated, my voice eerily calm. Is that what you were doing at the cafe tonight? Working? His whole body stiffened. His hands curled into fists, and he let out a slow breath through his nose. Linda, it's not what you think. I almost laughed. Oh? Because what I think is that my husband has been sneaking around, meeting up with another woman behind my back, lying to me about it, and smiling at his phone like some lovesick teenager. What exactly am I getting wrong? His jaw tightened. It's not an affair. Then why lie? He hesitated, and that was all I needed. I turned away, pressing my fingers to my temples, trying to breathe through the anger and the heartbreak swelling inside me. I can't do this, David. My voice broke, and I hated that. I didn't want him to see how much this was shattering me. Linda, please. She's just a friend. We talk, that's all. I spun to face him. You don't lie about a friend. You don't hide a friend. You don't touch a friend like that. He looked away. I could see the battle happening inside him, the war between guilt and self-preservation. And then, in a small voice, he whispered, I didn't mean for it to get this far. The words sliced through me like a blade. I had spent 25 years loving this man. I had given him my youth, my trust, my entire heart. And yet, here we were, standing in the ruins of everything we had built, with nothing but silence between us. Do you love her? I forced the words out, even though I wasn't sure I could handle the answer. His head snapped up. What? No, of course not. But you have feelings for her. The hesitation was brief, just a second, but I caught it. And suddenly, I wasn't sure what hurt more, the betrayal itself, or the realization that a part of him had already drifted away from me. I let out a shaky breath. I deserve better than this, David. His face crumpled. Linda, I love you. I held up a hand. Don't. If you loved me the way I deserve to be loved, we wouldn't be having this conversation. He took a step closer, his hands outstretched as if he could fix this with a simple touch. But it was too late. I turned away from him, blinking back the tears burning behind my eyes. I need space. His breath hitched. What does that mean? It means I need time to think. And you need to figure out what you really want. Because I won't be second place in my own marriage. For the first time that night, he had no words. And as I walked away, I realized that for the first time in a long time, I was choosing myself. If this story resonated with you, like, comment, and subscribe. Have you ever faced betrayal in a long-term relationship? Share your thoughts below. I'd love to hear from you.